I forgot who I am, the frostbitten boy cried. The Yakama warrior vowed, "You'll survive as my son." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the story. It was the harshest winter the land had seen in years. The icy winds howled across the vast, snow-covered plains, cutting through the trees and forcing even the most resilient creatures to take shelter. Deep within this unforgiving wilderness, a young boy, no older than 15, lay shivering in the snow, his body frostbitten and bruised from the journey that had nearly taken his life. His memories were blurred, his past a fog he could no longer hold on to. The only thing he could feel was the biting cold gnawing at his limbs and the crushing weight of uncertainty pressing against his chest. He had forgotten who he was, forgotten where he came from, forgotten everything but the overwhelming instinct to survive. His cries were barely audible over the wind, but they echoed the desperation of a soul that had lost its way. His name? Gone. His family? A distant memory. With every painful breath, the boy's body fought against the cold, but it was losing the battle. Just when he thought it was over, when his strength finally gave out, he felt something, or someone, grasp his arm. A strong, steady hand pulled him from the snow, and he was lifted into warmth. The boy's eyes fluttered open to see a man, no, a warrior, standing over him. His skin was tanned by years in the sun, his eyes as cold and sharp as the winter itself. He was tall, with the stature of someone who had faced death many times and had come out victorious. His clothing was simple but efficient for surviving in this harsh environment. A thick fur cloak, leather boots, and a war bonnet adorned with the feathers of his people. The warrior kneeled beside him, his expression unreadable, as he carefully assessed the boy's condition. The boy's mind was foggy, but he could still feel the strength of the man's grip, the power radiating from his every movement. Who are you?" the boy managed to whisper, his voice barely a rasp. The warrior did not immediately respond. Instead, he placed a hand on the boy's chest, steadying him. His touch was firm, but not unkind. Then, finally, the warrior spoke, his voice calm and deep. "You have forgotten who you are, but I will not forget you." The boy's mind struggled to process the words, but he felt something stir within him, a sense of security, a glimmer of hope. The warrior's gaze was unwavering. "I will not let you die here. You will survive. I will make sure of it." The boy tried to speak again, but his body was too weak, his lips frozen in place. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to rest against the warrior's side as the man began to carry him. The warrior moved with purpose, each step firm and measured. The boy could feel the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breath, and the promise of safety in his presence. "You will survive, little one," the warrior whispered, "as my son." And in that moment, the boy felt something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. The warrior's strength was undeniable as he carried the boy through the thick snow, the weight of his body seeming to cause no strain on the man's broad shoulders. With every step, the world around them seemed to grow quieter, the winds no longer howling but muffled, as if nature itself acknowledged the bond being forged between them. The boy's mind was clouded, his body still trembling from the cold, but something about the warrior's presence gave him a strange comfort, a sense of safety he had not known for a long time. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, the boy's thoughts began to clear, though his body was still weak from the frostbite and exhaustion. He wanted to ask the warrior his name, to understand who this man was, but the words stuck in his throat. The journey seemed to stretch on forever, the silence between them both calming and uneasy. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small, sheltered area nestled in the forest. The warrior gently lowered the boy to the ground, propping him up against a tree trunk, and began to build a fire. The boy watched him, his eyes struggling to stay open as the warmth from the fire started to spread through his frozen limbs. For the first time in days, the boy felt warmth not just in his body, but in his heart. The fire crackled as the warrior worked, and finally, the silence between them broke. "What is your name, boy?" the warrior asked, his voice low and steady. The boy opened his mouth to respond, but found his voice weak and distant. He tried to remember, but the name that had once been his was a ghost, fading with each passing hour. I don't know, the boy whispered, his voice trembling. I don't remember anything. The warrior nodded, as though expecting this answer. It doesn't matter. You are no longer the boy you were. You are here now, with us, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. The boy's mind raced. With us, he repeated, his voice cracking. The warrior nodded again. You are now part of my tribe, part of the Yakama. You will learn our ways, live by our rules. You will survive, and you will grow strong. The boy's eyes widened in disbelief. But I have nothing. I have no family, no name, no past, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The warrior crouched beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Your past is not what matters. What matters is the future we build together. I saw your will to survive. That is all I need to know. From now on, you will have a family. You will have a place. The boy's heart thudded in his chest. A family. A place. He had not heard those words in so long. He almost didn't know how to process them. He felt a mix of emotions, relief, fear, uncertainty. But beneath it all was a seed of hope, a fragile flicker of something he had thought lost forever. The fire crackled again as the warrior stood up, his figure towering over the boy. Rest now, the warrior said, his voice gentle but commanding. Tomorrow we begin. The boy nodded slowly, closing his eyes as the warmth of the fire enveloped him. As he drifted into a restless sleep, his mind wandered, but now there was a flicker of something more, an understanding that this might not be the end of his story, but a new beginning. And as the night grew colder, the boy wondered what tomorrow would bring, and whether he could truly survive in this new world. Little did he know, the warrior was not just a protector. He was the key to unlocking a future he had never imagined, a future where the boy would find strength, purpose, and a place to call home. I am the boy who was found in the snow, and I had forgotten everything. In the days that followed, I tried to learn, but my past was like a dream slipping further from my grasp. I did not remember my name, my family, or where I had come from. But what I did remember was that I was alive, and that the Yakama warrior had made me a promise. He had vowed that I would survive, and that I would become part of his tribe. The warmth from the fire still lingered in my bones as I lay in the shelter, trying to piece together the fragments of who I had been before. The warrior had told me to rest. And so, I did, though sleep came slowly. The next morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside the shelter. The wind had died down, and the sun was peeking through the trees, casting long shadows over the snow. The warrior was preparing to leave. He looked at me, his gaze steady. You are ready to begin, he said. You will not stay here in the shelter any longer. Today, you will learn to survive like us. I was unsure, still uncertain of what to expect, but I had no choice. I nodded and followed him outside. The world was silent, save for the crunch of snow beneath our feet. He led me through the trees and into the forest where the snow was thinner and the air smelled of pine. He stopped and turned to me. This is where you will learn to hunt, he said. A warrior must be strong and self-reliant. He handed me a bow, its weight unfamiliar in my hands. It was not much different from the one I had seen the warriors use the night before. I grasped it tightly, my fingers aching from the cold. You must first understand the land, the warrior said. It is not just about fighting. It is about respecting the land that gives you life. Learn to listen to the wind, to the animals, to the trees. They will teach you. I looked around, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over me. I was no warrior. I had never held a bow before. The warrior seemed to read my thoughts, and his voice softened. You will learn. Everyone must start somewhere. We moved deeper into the forest, and soon the warrior stopped. He knelt by a tree and pointed to the ground. Look, he said. I knelt beside him and saw the tracks in the snow. They were fresh, leading off into the thicket. A deer, the warrior whispered. Follow the tracks. Stay low. Move with the wind. I stood, taking a deep breath. My legs felt unsteady, but I followed the tracks as best I could. My heart raced as I moved through the trees, careful not to make a sound. The warrior was close behind, watching my every move. We had been tracking the deer for what felt like hours when we came to a small clearing. The deer was grazing in the distance, unaware of our presence. I could feel the tension in the air. The warrior leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "Take the shot." I raised the bow, my fingers trembling. I aimed, but the deer seemed to move with every breath I took. I exhaled slowly, steadying my hands. Time seemed to stretch as I focused on the target. Finally, with a deep breath, I released the arrow. It flew through the air with a soft whistle before striking the deer in the side. The animal stumbled, falling to the ground. I stood there, frozen in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. The warrior nodded, his eyes proud. "You did well," he said. I couldn't speak, my mind still reeling from what had just happened. The warrior walked over to the deer and knelt beside it, beginning the process of preparing it for the journey back. "This is how we survive," he said. "The land provides, but we must respect it. And we must honor the animal that gave its life to sustain us." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I fully understood. I had killed to survive, but the act still felt foreign to me. As we made our way back to the shelter, the warrior spoke again. "This is only the beginning," he said. "You will learn much more. But first, you must understand that survival is not just about strength. It is about honor, respect, and knowing your place in this world. You are now part of the Yakama, and you will stand with us as our son." His words echoed in my mind as we walked through the snow, the cold air biting at my face. My life had changed in ways I could not yet fully comprehend. But for the first time since I had been found in the snow, I felt something that had been missing for so long, a sense of purpose. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but it would also be mine to walk. And I would walk it, with honor and with the warrior who had saved me. I woke the next morning with the sun just beginning to rise over the frozen landscape. The warrior had already risen and started preparing the camp, his movements precise and deliberate, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. I could hear the soft crackle of the fire as it burned, and the distant calls of birds in the trees. Despite the cold, the air felt fresh, clean, and the weight of the past few days seemed to lift just a little. I rose slowly, still unsure of myself, but with a growing sense of determination. I was learning to survive, and though I had no idea who I had been, I knew that who I was becoming was someone who could stand with the Yakama. As I stood and stretched, the warrior turned to me. His expression was stoic as always, but there was something in his eyes, pride, perhaps. "Today, we begin your training," he said. "Survival is more than hunting. It is about living in balance with the world around you. You will learn to track, to find your way, to use the tools of our people." I nodded, understanding that this was just the beginning. There was so much I needed to learn, and I was ready. He handed me a small, weathered knife. "This is a weapon, yes, but it is also a tool. You will use it to build, to defend, and to respect the life that gives us strength." I took the knife, feeling its weight in my hand. It was sharp, honed to perfection, and I could see the care the warrior had taken in making it. The blade was old, but it was as sturdy as any I had ever seen. "Come," he said, turning to lead me deeper into the woods. We walked in silence, the only sound the crunch of snow beneath our feet and the rustling of branches in the cold wind. As we moved through the forest, he pointed out the signs of life around us. The way the trees bent in certain directions, the tracks of animals in the snow, the broken twigs that told the story of the night's activity. "The forest speaks to those who listen," the warrior said, his voice calm. "Learn to read it. Understand the signs." We stopped at a small clearing where the warrior began to teach me how to build a shelter, how to gather firewood, and how to use the knife to create the tools we would need to survive. The day was long, and by the time the sun began to set, I was exhausted. My hands ached from the work, and my muscles burned with the effort of learning something new. But there was also a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that I was one step closer to understanding what it meant to be part of this world. That evening, as the fire crackled and the warrior prepared the meal, he spoke again. "In our tribe, we learn not just how to survive, but how to live with honor. Every action has consequences. Every decision we make shapes who we are. You are no longer just a boy in the snow. You are becoming a Yakama. And as a Yakama, you will learn the ways of our people. You will stand beside us, not as an outsider, but as one of us." I sat in silence, the weight of his words sinking in. I had come from nothing, and now, I was being given the chance to belong. It was overwhelming, but I could also feel the strength of the tribe in his words, the strength of the bond he was offering. Later that night, as I lay on my bedroll staring up at the stars, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. I had no memory of my past, but I was starting to understand that the future was something I could shape. I wasn't alone anymore. I was part of something. And for the first time since the snowstorm had taken everything from me, I felt like I had a chance to find my place in the world. The warrior's voice interrupted my thoughts. Tomorrow, we begin the trials. You will face challenges. Some may be hard, but you must face them with the strength that is within you. You will learn what it means to be one of us, to stand with the Yakama. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that was hard to ignore. The trials were not just physical. They were tests of the spirit, of the heart. And though I had no idea what to expect, I knew one thing for certain. I was ready. As the fire flickered low and the cold wind swept through the trees, I closed my eyes, ready for whatever came next. I was not the boy I had been. I was becoming something else, something stronger. Something that would stand tall beside the warriors who had taken me in. The warrior was right. Survival was not just about living. It was about honor, respect, and finding your place in the world. And for the first time, I felt like I was on the path to finding mine. I woke to the sharp cry of an eagle circling high above, its silhouette cutting through the pale blue sky. The morning was colder than usual, a biting wind sweeping through the trees. I could feel it through the thin layers of clothing the warrior had given me, but I no longer shivered like I once had. My body had begun to adjust to the harsh elements of the wilderness, and I was growing stronger each day. The trials, I knew, were coming. The warrior had made it clear that I would face challenges that would test my strength, my mind, and my spirit. The day before, he had told me that survival was not just about physical endurance. It was about balance and understanding. He had said I would learn what it truly meant to be part of the Yakama tribe. I was ready. The warrior stood by the fire, preparing the morning meal, and I could see the familiar stoic expression on his face. He looked every bit the part of a seasoned leader, his eyes sharp, his body relaxed yet ready. His movements were deliberate, as though every task, no matter how small, was done with intention. Today, you will face the first trial, he said, his voice low and steady. It will not be easy, but it is necessary. It is a test of your mind, your heart, and your ability to adapt. He handed me a small pouch of dried herbs. These will help with your focus. But you must trust yourself. The trial is about seeing beyond what is in front of you. It is about finding clarity. I nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting him. The warrior led me to a narrow pass between two steep cliffs, the walls rising high above us. The ground beneath our feet was rocky and uneven, and I could hear the rush of water far below. The air was thin here, colder than anywhere we had traveled before. This is where you will begin, he said, pointing to a series of markings on the rock. These are the signs of our people. They tell a story of the seasons, the land, and the people who walked here before us. Your trial is simple. You must read these signs and follow them to the other side. But beware, the path is not as it seems. What you see may not always be what is real. I looked at the markings, trying to make sense of them. They were intricate symbols, curved lines, jagged edges, and geometric shapes. Each seemed to tell a story, but I could not yet understand their meaning. The warrior watched me closely, his face unreadable. Remember, he said, the signs are there to guide you, but you must listen to the land. It will speak to you if you allow it. I took a deep breath and began to follow the markings, stepping carefully over the uneven ground. The wind howled through the narrow pass, and the shadows seemed to dance on the rock, making it difficult to trust my eyes. As I moved deeper into the pass, the markings became more complex. At first, I focused only on the symbols, but soon, I realized that the rocks around me were telling their own story. The shape of the cliffs, the way the wind moved, the sound of the water below, all of it was part of the path. I had to stop, thinking so hard, and start listening. I paused for a moment, letting the wind wash over me, and closed my eyes. Slowly, I began to feel it, the rhythm of the land. The way the earth beneath me shifted with every step. The rocks seemed to hum with the energy of the earth itself, guiding me forward. The markings began to make sense. They were not just symbols on the rock. They were part of a larger picture, a map that led me through the pass and beyond. The warrior had told me that survival was about balance. I was beginning to understand. The path ahead was not just about physical strength. It was about trust, trust in the land, trust in the signs, and trust in myself. As I moved forward, I could feel the tension in my body begin to melt away. The trial was not just about reaching the end, but about embracing the journey itself. It was about finding peace in the chaos, understanding that the world around me was not something to conquer, but something to respect. By the time I reached the other side of the pass, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. The warrior was waiting for me at the top of the cliffs, his expression unreadable. I stepped forward, feeling a quiet sense of pride swelling in my chest. "You passed the trial," he said simply. "But this is only the beginning. There will be more challenges, and they will only get harder. But you are ready. You have learned the first lesson, trust yourself." I stood there, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of his words. The warrior had not asked for perfection. He had asked for growth. And for the first time, I felt like I was beginning to understand what it meant to be part of this tribe. The path was long, but I was no longer lost. I had found my place, and I was ready for whatever came next. I woke the next morning to the sound of birds calling in the trees, a gentle reminder that life continued even in the harshest of conditions. The warrior had already risen and was tending to the fire, his movements methodical and precise. The morning air was sharp, a crispness that made every breath feel fresh and alive. Despite the cold, there was a warmth inside me that had been missing for a long time. The trial from the day before had shaken me, but it had also shown me something important. That survival was not just about fighting or hunting, but about understanding and adapting. Today, the warrior said, we would continue my training. It was time for a new challenge. We set out into the forest, the ground covered in a layer of frost that crunched beneath our boots. The warrior was silent as always, leading me deeper into the wilderness. The trees stood tall, their branches bare and reaching up toward the sky like skeletal hands. The world felt both alive and still at the same time. It was as though nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. We walked for what seemed like hours, the only sounds being the distant calls of animals and the rustling of the wind through the trees. Finally, the warrior stopped, turning to face me. Today, he said, you will face a different kind of trial. It is not about the land or the animals. It is about your connection to the tribe. It is about trust. He handed me a small bundle of cloth, and I unwrapped it to reveal a wooden staff, smooth and polished. This is a tool of our people, he explained. You will use it to help others. Today, you will learn how to lead. I looked at the staff, unsure of what he meant. To lead. I asked, how can I lead when I am still learning? The warrior's gaze softened slightly. Every warrior must understand that leadership is not about strength alone. It is about guiding others, making choices for the good of the tribe, and being there when they need you most. This staff will help you find that strength within yourself. You will learn to use it not only for yourself, but for others. I nodded, still uncertain, but willing to try. The warrior led me to a nearby stream where a group of villagers had gathered, preparing to cross the water. There was a deep, fast-moving current, and the rocks beneath the surface were slippery. This is where you will begin, the warrior said. Your task is simple. Guide these people across safely. Use the staff to help them. Show them the way. I approached the group, my heart pounding. I had no experience with leading others, and the task seemed daunting. The villagers looked at me expectantly, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. They were unsure of me, unsure of my ability to lead them. The pressure weighed heavily on me, but I remembered what the warrior had said. It wasn't about strength. It was about trust. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, the staff in my hand. Follow me, I said, my voice steady despite the uncertainty I felt. The villagers hesitated, but slowly they began to move, following me as I led them across the slippery rocks. The water rushed by, cold and unforgiving, but with every step, I felt more confident. I used the staff to steady myself, and I held it out to help others across. There were moments of doubt, moments when I thought we might not make it, but I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. Slowly, one by one, the villagers made it across. When the last person stepped safely onto the shore, I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The warrior was standing nearby, watching. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something. Approval, perhaps. You have done well, he said. This trial was not about physical strength. It was about trust. You led them, and in doing so, you led yourself. I looked at the villagers, who were now gathered on the bank, their faces filled with gratitude. It was a small thing, guiding them across the stream, but in that moment, I understood the weight of leadership. It wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being there for others when they needed you most. I had learned that lesson in a way I had never expected. The warrior's voice interrupted my thoughts. This is only one trial. There will be many more. But you have taken the first step. You are learning what it means to be part of the Yakama. I nodded, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. The warrior had shown me not just how to survive, but how to live with purpose. I had no memory of my past, but as I stood there, looking at the people I had helped, I felt something stronger than ever before. I was part of something now, and whatever trials lay ahead, I would face them with the same strength and trust one had found in myself today. I woke early the next morning, the cool air biting at my skin as the sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The warrior had already left the shelter, his figure silhouetted against the light. It was becoming familiar, this rhythm of life. Every day, I felt myself growing stronger, learning more, and beginning to understand the ways of the Yakama. Yet, despite the progress, there was still a part of me that felt unsure, still searching for a place in this world that had once felt so foreign. The warrior had told me that survival was not just about strength, but about heart, about finding balance in all things. I had passed the trials of the land, the animals, and the people, but now I knew there was something deeper I had yet to face. I finished my morning routine, gathering my things and preparing for whatever the day would bring. The warrior returned to the shelter, his face unreadable as always. Today, he said, you will face your greatest trial. It is not one of survival, but of your spirit. I felt a weight settle in my chest. I had been prepared for physical tests, for endurance, but this was different. The warrior's gaze softened just slightly. This is a trial of the soul. You will go into the mountains, alone. You must find yourself. When you return, you will know what it means to truly belong to the Yakama. He handed me a small pouch, filled with dried herbs. These will help clear your mind, but you must go without guidance. Trust yourself. I nodded, though a part of me felt a knot form in my stomach. I had been alone before, but this felt different. This was a test of who I was, not just of my ability to survive. I set off into the mountains, the towering peaks rising high above me, their snow-capped tops cutting into the sky. The path was narrow, winding through dense forests and rocky terrain. My heart pounded in my chest, not from physical exertion, but from the weight of the journey ahead. I walked for hours, the forest growing quieter as I moved deeper into the mountains. The trees thinned, and the wind began to pick up, howling through the open spaces. I could feel the isolation pressing down on me, but I pressed on, determined to face whatever challenge lay ahead. The further I went, the more I could hear the faint whispers of my thoughts. My mind drifted to memories, to the life I had lost, to the boy I had been. I thought of the warrior and the people of the tribe. They had given me a chance when I had nothing, when I was nothing. But who was I, really? I still didn't know my name. I still didn't know where I had come from or why I had been abandoned in the snow. As I walked, the wind picked up, and I could feel the cold beginning to seep into my bones. I found a small cave nestled between the rocks, the perfect shelter for the night. I sat down inside, wrapping myself in the warmth of the furs I had carried with me. The stillness of the mountains surrounded me, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to reflect. The warrior had told me to find myself, but how could I find something I had already lost? I closed my eyes, trying to quiet my mind, but the questions swirled in my head like the storm outside. Who was I? Why had I been chosen by the Yakama? What was my place in all of this? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the answers I sought weren't out there in the mountains. They weren't in the past I could no longer remember. The answers were within me. I had already begun to change, to become something new. I had survived because I had learned to trust myself. The warrior had taught me that survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about learning to listen, to adapt, and to respect the world around me. As I sat in the cave, the winds howling outside, I understood that I was not just surviving. I was becoming who I was meant to be. The night passed slowly, the silence of the mountains heavy around me. When the morning light finally broke through the darkness, I knew it was time to return. I gathered my things, my heart steady and my mind clear. The mountains had shown me what I needed to see. I was not lost anymore. I had found something in myself that I had never known was there, the strength to keep moving forward. As I made my way back down the mountain, I could feel the weight lifting from my chest, replaced by something new, purpose. I returned to the shelter where the warrior was waiting, his eyes watching me as I approached. "You have found your way," he said, his voice calm. "You have faced your trial and come through stronger for it." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. I had faced the trial of the mountains, and in doing so, I had faced myself. I had learned what it meant to be part of the Yakama. It wasn't just about survival. It was about trust. Trust in the land. Trust in the people. And most importantly, trust in myself. I had returned from the mountains a changed person. The warrior had given me the time and space I needed to understand the trial of the soul. I had gone into the wilderness seeking answers, and though I did not find the past I had lost, I had discovered something much more important, a strength inside me that I had never known existed. I was no longer just a boy lost in the snow. I was becoming a part of something bigger than myself. The warrior had not told me what to expect next, but I could feel the change in the air. The days were growing colder, the nights longer, and I knew that there would be no more easy lessons. This was the time when the true tests of the Yakama would begin. One evening, after we had eaten, the warrior looked at me with a quiet intensity. "It is time for you to prove yourself fully," he said. "Tomorrow, you will face the greatest trial of all. It is not about surviving in the wilderness. It is about standing with the tribe, about fighting for something bigger than yourself." I looked at him, my heart racing. I had faced many trials already, the trial of the land, of the animals, of the spirit. But this was different. This was about more than just myself. It was about the Yakama, the tribe that had taken me in, given me a place when I had nothing. "What must I do?" I asked, my voice steady, though my mind was swirling with uncertainty. The warrior's eyes softened slightly. "There are those who threaten us, outsiders, who have come to take what is ours. We must defend what is ours. You will fight beside us, as a Yakama." I nodded, understanding what he meant. The tribe was my family now, and I would fight to protect them, no matter the cost. The next morning, we set out before dawn. The warrior and I moved swiftly through the forest, our footsteps silent in the deep snow. We were joined by others of the tribe, warriors who had lived their entire lives in the harsh lands, their faces hard and set with determination. We were bound for a distant encampment where the outsiders had gathered. They were a group of raiders, known for their brutality, who had been plundering the lands of the Yakama and neighboring tribes. The warriors spoke little, but I could sense the tension in the air. This was not just about a fight. This was about survival, about protecting the life we had fought so hard to build. As we neared the raider camp, we stopped in a dense thicket, hidden from view. The warrior motioned for me to crouch low, his eyes scanning the area. "Wait for my signal," he said quietly. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, the weight of the situation settling over me. This was real. This was no longer a lesson. This was a fight for our lives. Moments passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the warrior nodded, signaling for us to move. We moved like shadows, quick and silent, slipping through the trees until we reached the edge of the camp. I could hear the voices of the raiders, their laughter and harsh words drifting in the cold morning air. The warriors signaled again, and we spread out, positioning ourselves for the attack. The plan was simple. We would strike fast and hard, overwhelm them before they had a chance to react. I gripped the weapon in my hand, a spear, its tip sharp and ready. My mind was focused, but my hands were shaking. This was the first time I had ever been in a real battle. I had hunted before, but this was different. The warrior's voice broke through my thoughts, steady and commanding. "Remember what you've learned. Fight with honor. Protect the tribe." We charged forward, a blur of motion and noise. The raiders were caught off guard, scrambling to arm themselves, but we were faster. The clash of steel and the grunts of men filled the air as we fought, moving as one, a force of nature. I fought with everything I had, my body moving on instinct. The fear was there, but it was buried beneath a wave of purpose. I was fighting for something greater than myself. I was fighting for the Yakama. The battle raged on, but soon the raiders began to falter. We had the upper hand. They were not prepared for the fury of the Yakama warriors. I could see the warrior, moving like a shadow among the chaos, striking with precision, his spear finding its mark every time. And then it was over. The raiders were defeated, their numbers scattered. I stood, panting, my heart still racing. My hands were bloodied, but I didn't feel fear. I felt something else, pride. I had done what I needed to do. I had stood with the Yakama, and we had protected what was ours. The warrior approached me, his expression unreadable. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes searching mine. "You have done well," he said. "You fought like a Yakama. Today, you have proven yourself." I stood there, the weight of his words sinking in. I had fought. I had protected. And for the first time, I felt truly part of something. The warrior nodded once, and we turned back toward the camp. The battle was over, but I knew that this was only the beginning. The trials of the Yakama were not just about surviving the world around us. They were about standing together, about fighting for one another, and about finding strength in unity. And I knew now, without a doubt, that I had found my place. I was not just a boy who had been abandoned in the snow. I was a Yakama, and I would stand with them, no matter what came next. I had never been more certain of who I was than I was in this moment. The warrior had given me everything I needed to survive, and in return, I had fought with every ounce of my being for the tribe that had taken me in. The Yakama were not just people I lived among, they were my family now. That night, after the battle, we returned to the village. The air was still and cold, the stars above us clearer than they had ever been. The fires from the fight had long since died down, and all that remained was the quiet hum of the wind, carrying the scent of the earth and the snow. The warriors who had fought alongside me were silent, but there was a recognition in their eyes. They had seen my strength, my determination, and they knew that I was no longer the lost boy who had wandered into their world. I had proven myself as one of them. The warrior and I walked together in the darkness, his long strides making it easy for him to keep pace with me. He did not speak, but there was a calm presence in him that made me feel as though I had nothing to fear. After a while, he stopped and turned to face me. "You have done well," he said quietly. "Today, you showed your strength. But there is one last lesson for you to learn." My heart tightened. I had faced so many trials already. What else could there be? He looked at me with those piercing eyes, the wisdom of countless battles reflected in them. Leadership is more than strength. It is about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It is about seeing beyond yourself, beyond the tribe. It is about understanding the greater world around you. The Yakama do not exist in isolation. We must learn to navigate the wider world, and that is a lesson you will learn now. The words hung in the air like an unanswered question. "What do you mean?" I asked, confusion creeping into my voice. The warrior's gaze softened slightly, but his tone was firm. "Tomorrow, we will leave the village. There are new challenges beyond our borders, new allies and enemies. You will come with me. This is the next step in your journey." I nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting in his wisdom. The next morning, we gathered our things and set out, leaving the safety of the village behind. The journey was long and treacherous, the wind biting at our skin as we crossed barren plains and dense forests. The warrior was always a few steps ahead, his pace unrelenting. As we traveled, I noticed the subtle changes in his behavior. He was watching, listening, his every move purposeful, as though he was searching for something just beyond the horizon. Days passed, and we continued to trek through unfamiliar territory. We crossed rivers, climbed mountains, and navigated dense forests. I began to feel the weight of the journey pressing down on me, but I pushed forward, determined to prove myself. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we arrived at a small camp nestled between the hills. The warrior halted and motioned for me to stay close. The air was thick with tension. There were figures moving in the shadows, and the unmistakable scent of smoke filled the air. The warrior's eyes were alert, scanning the area. "Stay here," he said. "This is where you will learn the next lesson. To lead, you must understand negotiation, diplomacy. Not all battles are fought with weapons." As we approached the camp, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man with a scar across his face, his clothes weathered from years of travel, stepped forward. The warrior bowed his head slightly, acknowledging the man's presence. "I did not expect you so soon," the man said, his voice deep and gravelly. "The Yakama are known for their strength, but it is wisdom that will truly keep you safe. The warrior nodded, his expression unreadable. We are here to speak of peace, he said. Not all battles are fought with weapons. Some are won through words. The two men spoke in hushed tones, their conversation filled with terms and concepts I did not fully understand. The words exchanged were not about fighting, but about alliances, land, and the balance of power between tribes. I stood in the background, watching the exchange, the weight of the situation settling in. This was not the first time the warrior had been here, and I could sense that the outcome of this meeting was crucial. As the conversation continued, the warrior turned to me and motioned for me to approach. Do you understand what has transpired here? He asked. I nodded, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the complex web of alliances and power struggles that surrounded us. Leadership, the warrior said, is not about force. It is about knowing when to fight, when to speak, and when to listen. You will have to navigate these challenges in the future. Your strength will only take you so far. But your wisdom, your understanding, that is what will make you a leader. The lesson was clear, though its weight was still heavy on my shoulders. It was not just about fighting for survival, not just about physical strength. It was about the ability to make choices, to understand the world beyond your own people, and to find a way to secure the future. We stayed at the camp for another day, gathering information, forming alliances, and learning how to navigate the world of politics and diplomacy. It was a world I had never imagined, a world where words could be as powerful as weapons. As we left the camp and began our journey back to the Yakama village, I felt a new sense of purpose. I had learned something vital. Leadership was not just about survival. It was about knowing when to step forward, when to speak, and when to walk away. It was about understanding the bigger picture. I was no longer just the boy in the snow. I was a leader in the making, and the road ahead would be long. But for the first time, I felt ready for whatever challenges lay in front of me. I walked alongside the warrior on our journey back to the Yakama village, my mind still reeling from the lessons I had learned over the past few days. The conversations with the raiders, the trial of diplomacy, and the understanding that leadership was not just about physical strength. These ideas weighed heavily on me. The world outside the Yakama village was vast and full of challenges I had never imagined. It was not just about fighting the elements or defending against enemies. It was about the balance of power, the alliances we formed, and the wisdom needed to navigate this world. As we neared the village, I could see the familiar outlines of the longhouses and the smoke rising from the central fire. The warmth of home seemed distant, though, as I thought about everything that lay beyond our borders. The warrior turned to me as we walked. The path ahead will not always be clear, he said, his voice calm, yet filled with a certain weight. There will be times when you will doubt yourself. There will be moments when the decisions you must make will not be easy. I looked at him, my heart heavy with the uncertainty of the future. What should I do when that happens? I asked. He was silent for a moment before answering. You will remember what you have learned. You will listen to the land. You will trust your instincts. And when you doubt, you will find strength in the people around you. Leadership is not just about what you can do alone. It is about what we can do together. The words sank deep into my soul. Leadership, I realized, was a shared responsibility, a collective strength. I was no longer just an individual. I was part of something much larger, something that required not just my strength, but my wisdom, my trust in others, and my willingness to listen. The warrior and I entered the village, and the people greeted us with quiet nods of recognition. I had fought beside them, stood with them in the battle, and now I could feel the weight of their expectations. They had seen me as an outsider, but now, perhaps, I was becoming one of them. As we approached the center of the village, the elder woman, who had always watched over the tribe, stepped forward. Her presence was both commanding and gentle, and her eyes held the wisdom of many years. She looked at me with a gaze that seemed to pierce through me, as though she could see not just who I was, but who I had yet to become. You have proven your worth, child, she said, her voice soft yet filled with strength. But now, you must prove it to yourself. You are not the boy you once were, wandering the snow, lost and alone. You are one of us now. But you must decide if you are ready to embrace that fully. Her words were simple, but they struck a deep chord within me. I had fought for the tribe, learned from the warrior, and faced the trials of the land and the spirit. But now, It seemed there was one last step I had to take. How do I prove it? I asked, my voice quiet. The elder woman smiled gently, her eyes full of understanding. You must take your place. Stand not just with the warriors, but with the tribe as a whole. You will be part of the decisions we make, part of the future we build. And you will lead, not just with your strength, but with your heart. I looked around the village, the people who had once been strangers, now becoming the family I had never known. The fire at the center of the village crackled brightly, its warmth reaching out to the edges of the camp. The warriors' eyes met mine, and I saw a quiet pride in them, the same pride that had been in the eyes of the other warriors when I fought beside them. I had become more than just an outsider. I had become a part of this place, this people. The weight of the future hung before me, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a responsibility I was ready to take on. That night, as I lay beneath the stars, the fire burning brightly in the center of the village, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The trials had not been easy, and the journey had been long, but in that moment, I knew that I had found my place. I had a future here, and it was a future I would help shape, alongside the people who had taught me how to survive, how to lead, and how to find my way in a world that had once seemed so vast and unknown. I had come a long way from the boy lost in the snow, and the path ahead was still unclear. But for the first time, I felt ready to walk it, with honor, with strength, and with the wisdom I had earned. The Yakama were my family now, and together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead. I stood at the edge of the village, the horizon stretched out before me, the sky darkening as night began to fall. The fires from the central hearth flickered against the cool air, casting long shadows over the settlement. It was a peaceful scene, but something deep within me told me that peace was only temporary. The trials I had faced, the battles I had fought, had only been the beginning. There was more to come, and I knew that I had to be ready for whatever lay ahead. The Yakama had accepted me as one of their own, but the world outside our borders was vast, and I still had much to learn. The warrior had been training me, guiding me, but there were times when I felt like an outsider once again. I had come a long way, from the lost boy in the snow to the warrior standing at the edge of this village, but there were still many questions I had yet to answer. I couldn't help but wonder what my place truly was in all of this. The warrior approached, his steady footsteps breaking my thoughts. He was silent for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon just like mine. You are troubled, he said, his voice calm but knowing. I nodded, not bothering to hide the uncertainty that still lingered within me. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted. Ready for what? He asked. To lead, I replied. To be the man I'm supposed to be. To stand with the tribe as one of them. I feel like there's still something I'm missing. The warrior stood beside me, his presence solid and unwavering. The path of a leader is not an easy one, he said. It is not about knowing all the answers, but about making the right decisions when the time comes. It is about understanding that you are never alone. You are always part of something greater. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so focused on my own journey, on proving myself, that I had forgotten the most important lesson of all. Leadership is about the people around you. It's about the tribe, the community, the family. It's not about standing alone at the top. It's about standing with those you lead. I had thought that I needed to be perfect, that I had to have everything figured out before I could truly belong. But now I realized that what mattered most was my willingness to stand by the Yakama, to fight for them, and to lead them when the time came. You are ready, the warrior said, as though reading my thoughts. The tribe will follow you because they believe in you. Not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to stand with them, no matter the cost. His words felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had spent so much time worrying about whether I was ready, but now I understood that readiness wasn't about being flawless. It was about commitment, about showing up and being there for the people who needed you. We stood in silence for a few moments, watching the firelight dance in the distance. The warrior finally turned to face me. Tomorrow, we leave the village again, he said. We will travel to the neighboring tribe. There are more alliances to be made, more work to be done. The world is vast, and we must secure our place in it. I nodded, feeling a new sense of determination rise within me. I had found my place with the Yakama, but the journey was far from over. There was still much to do, and I was ready to take the next step. The next morning, we packed our belongings and set out once again, leaving the village behind. The cold wind stung my face as we walked, but the unease I had felt in the past was no longer there. With every step, I felt more certain of my place in this world. The trials, the lessons, the battles, they had all brought me to this moment. And now, I was ready to face whatever came next, not as a lost boy, but as a leader among the Yakama. We traveled through the dense forests and across wide, open plains, the journey slow but steady. The warrior moved with purpose, and I followed closely, absorbing everything around me. We were not just traveling for ourselves. We were traveling for the future of the tribe, for the strength of the people who had accepted me. As we neared the neighboring tribe's settlement, I could feel the tension in the air. The warriors we were about to meet were just as formidable as the Yakama, and I knew that this meeting would not be without its challenges. But this time, I was not afraid. I was ready. The warrior turned to me as we approached the settlement. "Remember what you've learned," he said. "Speak with conviction, with honor. This is your time to lead." My heart raced, but the doubt that had once clouded my mind was gone. I stood tall, my shoulders squared, and as we entered the camp of the neighboring tribe, I felt a new sense of pride in myself. I was not just a boy from the snow. I was a Yakama warrior, and I was ready to prove it to the world. I stood at the edge of the neighboring tribe's settlement, feeling the weight of the moment settle in my chest. The wind was sharp, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth, but it wasn't the cold that made me feel uneasy. It was the uncertainty, the tension that always comes before something new, something that could change everything. The warrior beside me had taught me much, but today would be different. Today, I would face the unknown, speak to the people of another tribe, and fight for something far bigger than myself. This was not just about survival or strength. It was about alliances, about securing the future for the Yakama, and standing as one of their leaders. As we approached the camp, the warriors of the neighboring tribe were already gathering, their eyes watching us with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. These were not just strangers to us. They were a powerful force in the region, their reputation built on their own battles and victories. The warrior did not hesitate. He walked with purpose, his eyes locked forward. I followed him, my heart beating faster with each step. The camp was bustling with activity, people moving about their business, but the air felt charged. The tension was palpable. When we reached the center of the camp, the leader of the tribe stood waiting for us. He was a tall man, his face hard and scarred, his eyes sharp and calculating. There was no smile, no welcoming gesture, only the weight of his gaze. "You come seeking an alliance?" the man asked, his voice low and steady. The warrior nodded, his voice calm but firm. "We seek peace and strength through unity." The leader looked me over, his eyes lingering on me for a moment longer than they should have. It was the kind of look that made you feel both seen and measured at the same time. I could feel the pressure building. This wasn't just a negotiation, this was a challenge. The warrior had told me to speak with conviction, with honor. It was my turn now. I stepped forward, my voice steady but carrying the weight of my words. The Yakama stand strong, but we are not blind to the world around us. Alone, we are vulnerable. But together, we are stronger. This alliance is not just for our benefit. It is for the future of our people, for our children and the generations to come. We stand not just as warriors, but as families, as one united people. My words felt stronger than I expected, and for a moment, the leader's gaze softened. But only for a moment. He was still silent, still studying us. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Your words carry weight. But words alone are not enough. You speak of unity, but how will you prove it?" I paused, my heart racing. This was the moment where the true test of my leadership would come. "We will prove it with actions," I said, my voice firm. "Not just promises, but by standing together, by fighting together when the time comes." The leader's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was a glimmer of respect there. "You speak well, but actions speak louder. Show me you are worth the trust you ask for." With that, he turned and gestured to one of his warriors. The challenge was clear. I was being tested, not just by words, but by deeds. The warrior from the neighboring tribe walked toward me, his weapon in hand. "Fight me," he said, his voice cold, his stance ready. "Prove your worth." My heart hammered in my chest. I had fought before, but this was different. This was not just about survival. This was about showing the tribe that I was worthy of their trust, worthy of standing beside them. The warrior from the neighboring tribe raised his weapon, and I did the same. I felt the weight of the spear in my hand, its point sharp and steady. The fight began with a clash of steel, the sound of metal meeting metal ringing in the air. I was quick, but so was he. Every move I made, he countered. Every step I took, he anticipated. It was a dance, an ancient, timeless dance of warriors. The battle lasted longer than I expected, my arms aching from the effort, my body moving on instinct, just as I had been taught. The warrior from the neighboring tribe was skilled, his movements precise, but I could feel something in me shifting. I was no longer just the boy who had stumbled into the Yakama village. I was more. I was a warrior. I was their leader. With a final push, I disarmed the warrior, the tip of my spear at his chest. He stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes meeting mine. There was no anger, no resentment. Only the understanding that this battle, this test, was over. He lowered his weapon, and I did the same. You have proven yourself, the leader said, his voice filled with a new respect. You have shown us your strength. You have earned our trust. The warrior from the neighboring tribe nodded in acknowledgement. You fight with honor, he said, his voice no longer cold, but filled with respect. I stood there, breathing heavily, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I had done it. I had passed the test. And in doing so, I had secured the future of the Yakama and the alliance we had sought. The warrior beside me gave me a small nod, his eyes full of pride. You are ready, he said simply. The leader of the neighboring tribe stepped forward, extending his hand. Welcome to our alliance, Yakama. I took his hand, the weight of the moment settling in. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. We had forged an alliance, not just with words, but with our actions. The future lay ahead, and I was ready to lead the Yakama into it, not just as a warrior, but as the leader they had always known I could be. The days following the alliance were filled with the hum of activity. The neighboring tribe, once distant and separate, had become a strong ally, and our united front was more formidable than ever. The bond we had formed through strength, respect, and trust was not just about survival anymore. It was about the future we were all building together. But even as the Yakama and our new allies celebrated our victory, I knew that peace was always temporary. The world outside was vast, and there were forces out there that would test our strength again. As the sun dipped low in the sky one evening, I found myself standing at the edge of the camp, the familiar rhythm of the village life humming around me. The warrior, who had taught me everything I knew, stood beside me. His presence was quiet, yet it always felt like an anchor, grounding me in a way I hadn't fully understood until now. You've come far, he said, his voice steady as ever. I nodded, though I felt the weight of his words more than I let on. It's not over yet, I said, more to myself. Then to him. He didn't reply immediately, but I could feel his gaze on me. No, it's not, he said at last, his tone softening just slightly. But you are ready for whatever comes next. I looked out at the horizon, the vast open space that stretched beyond the camp, beyond the tribe, into the unknown. The world was full of uncertainty, but I knew now that I wasn't facing it alone. The Yakama were my family, and I was their leader. And the world outside, with all its challenges and unknowns, would not break us. You have the strength of a warrior, the warrior said, his voice breaking through my thoughts. But more than that, you have the heart of a leader. You have earned the trust of your people. You've shown them that you will fight, not just for yourself, but for all of them. His words filled me with a quiet pride. In all my trials, in every battle, I had been fighting not just for survival, but for something much bigger. For the Yakama. For our future. There will always be challenges, the warrior continued. But a true leader knows when to lead, when to follow, and when to listen. You've learned that. And with time, you will continue to grow. I turned to face him, meeting his gaze. There was no doubt in my mind anymore. I had found my place. Not just in the tribe, but in the world. Thank you, I said, my voice steady but filled with gratitude. He nodded once, his expression softening for the first time in all the years I had known him. You've earned it, he said. We stood there for a while longer, the camp buzzing with life. But for that moment, everything was still. I had come so far from the boy who had wandered into the snow, lost and uncertain. I had faced trials that had shaped me, battles that had tested my strength, and moments of doubt that had made me question everything. But through it all, I had found my purpose. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be more battles, more tests of strength and resolve. But I was no longer the same person I had been when I first arrived. I had a family now, a tribe that stood with me, and that I stood for. And together we would face whatever came next. The warrior turned and walked back toward the camp, and I followed him, my steps steady and sure. As I walked, I looked out at the village, the longhouses where the Yakama lived, the children playing, the warriors sharpening their weapons, the fires burning brightly in the distance. This was my home, and no matter what the future held, I would protect it with everything I had. The warrior had taught me that leadership was not just about power, but about heart. And with that lesson, I knew I was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. I was a leader of the Yakama now, and together, we would rise, stronger than ever, to face the world that awaited us. Explore the gripping journey of survival and leadership in this powerful tale set in the wild, where the challenges of the frontier shape a young warrior's destiny. A lost boy, abandoned in the snow, finds himself in a tribe where the trials of the land, spirit, and diplomacy test him in ways he never imagined. As the boy transforms into a leader, he faces fierce battles, builds alliances, and navigates the complex world of power and respect. With the wisdom of seasoned warriors and the strength of the tribe behind him, he steps into a role that will change not only his life, but the future of his people. In this captivating story that mirrors the essence of Western stories, you'll witness a powerful transformation of a boy into a leader, as the challenges of the wilderness push him to embrace his destiny. Through the rugged terrains and intricate tribal dynamics, this story unfolds with the grit and resilience found in the best Western stories. As the boy learns from his mentor and builds his strength, he rises to become the man who will lead his tribe into a new era, proving that true leadership is forged through both struggle and unity. If you love rich, character-driven Western stories filled with drama, survival, and action, this journey will keep you hooked from start to finish. Step into the world of Western stories where the line between survival and leadership is drawn in every battle, and witness how the past, present, and future of a tribe are shaped by the heart of one individual.